Okay, let's see how this works. The coronavirus means curtains for artists. The loss of revenue from live events is only the start of this particular disaster. Uh, just looking at this article, I just wanted to talk about the fact that when you look at artists and how artists are going to be particularly hit, artists are very much like an entrepreneur. An artist goes out there, finds their gigs, they do the legwork, they approach people, they have to be on point with their product, it has to be good, and they have to be bringing patrons into the bar or club where they're working. That requires practice, knowledge, know-how. Um, you don't just wake up and become a beautiful guitar player. That requires hours and hours and hundreds of hours of practice. And you're also not just about to be the first person to walk out on the stage and knock the crowd away. It doesn't work that way. You have to have something of a gift, something of a talent, or at least something of a major sense of perseverance in order to make that work. The same goes for entrepreneurs. It's not as easy as you might think to start a business. I only know because I've been looking into doing it myself. And there's a lot you need to know. You need to come up with a business plan. You need to do your market research. You need to do what is your overhead going to cost you. You need to know how much your product is going to cost you to bring in the raw materials, production. It's going to cost to package that, ship it. Everybody thinks it's this easy thing that just anyone can do. But depending on the product, it's quite complicated. And it takes real dedication and often a lot more work than the average 9 to 5er is willing to put in, or the average hourly wage slave, as some people like to call them, want to put in. So why do we disparage entrepreneurs so much? We think that they're getting away with everything, where they're always writing everything off and getting tax breaks and all this kind of stuff. Well, you know what? Anybody can do it. I mean, you have to have the raw talents, sure, but anybody can do it. Nothing stops anyone from starting a business. You want to start a business? Come up with an idea, write it down, think about it some more, make some plans, look to see if it's something that could be viable, and then produce it. But most businesses, most small businesses that start, don't actually get that far. Something like 70% fail within the first year, and an even smaller percentage go past the first 5. So in order to become one of these big Goliath-style companies, you need to be successful at first, which means you need to have the right idea. And to have the right idea doesn't mean it just comes out of your own head. It means it needs to be something that people are going to want to buy or purchase or spend their hard-earned money on that service. And it's very much the same for musicians. You can't just be some guy that gets up there, only knows 1 or 2 chords and has no voice, much like myself. You need to be talented. You need to put something into it. And if you want to go that extra mile, you got to put together your look, be kind of cool about it. But the reason I wanted to talk about this article is because basically they're talking about, well, let me just read it to you. In attempting to understand the impact of the pandemic on artists and the arts, we need to start by recognizing that this new crisis has collided with an arts economy that was already severely weakened by 20 years of digital assault. Yes, it is absolutely true that we went from recording studios where they would press vinyl to tapes made it more accessible for, well, I mean, I suppose it was 8 tracks first, but to tapes, to radio, to, well, the radio is more about getting your music out there and creating a demand for your recordings. But at the end of the day, we went to CD and then to MP3. And I've lamented that fact myself. I remember Napster came out, and I'll be the first to say that I was a serial abuser of Napster because I'm a big fan of music, obviously. But I also put my money where my mouth is. I mean, I spend thousands of dollars, literally thousands of dollars on music. I would say probably tens of thousands of dollars on music, more than the average person. So, being a big fan of music like I was and am, um, I put my money where my mouth was. So I didn't rip off any artist. You could say that, some person downloads a song because they got it on Napster and they're ripping off the artist. But the truth is that there's a saturation of music out there, and we as consumers have become a little bit gluttonous, haven't we, in the way that we consume things. Just like children, really. I mean, the funny thing about kids is you give them a toy, and if they know that there's another toy out there that is from the same collection of toys. I mean, my kids love these Grocery Gang. And the clever part about Grocery Gang is they give you this slip, and the slip has all the different grocery gangs that you can get. They know that with books too. In the back of books, there's always like, "Oh, you like this? You like this Wildcrats book? Look what's in the back of the Wildcrats book. Ooh, there's other Wildcrats book. Ooh, you like Batman? Here's all the Batman books you can get, and maybe you're gonna want some Green Lantern." Well, you know what? That appeals to people. Having something new and exciting is always better than having the same old, same old. We become accustomed to things and we get into ruts and we want something new and exciting all the time. And the truth is that for human beings, we have infinite wants. And something has to be able to stifle that. Now, going back to digital music, I think a lot of people collect music, and there might be one or two songs that they really play out. But for the most part, who has time to listen to all the music? And so, really, what you have is a supply and demand issue. If there's millions of artists making music and it can come to you from all around the world, why should one get to make a lot of money off of each album that they produce? I think I'm not taking anything away from musicians. Like I said, it takes a lot of work to become a musician, but it's a job like any other job. And it's only a handful of guys that achieve the kind of notoriety and famous name that signs them to a large label where they get a record deal where they might make some money, but they might be also stuck on tour for the next 2 or 3 years of their lives. And that can't necessarily be fun unless you're into that lifestyle. I know it wouldn't have been something that would appeal to me, but there are people out there that might have found that something that they would desire. And, you can become rich and famous, and if you're lucky, you don't become dated and you don't become too wrapped up in the lifestyle. There's a lot, you know, for any human being, if you want to be successful, you can only be so nihilistic. You need to be something of a workhorse. One of the things about Prince was pretty much emotionally abused. I think physically abused as a child. I don't believe sexually abused, but um, he was a workhorse. He would work his ass off 24/7. Um, he had his entire house. What was the name of it? Feel free to tell me, but it was after one of his albums or his songs, I believe. But he had every single room in that house wired for sound just in case the mood struck him so that he could just go to work and make music. I mean, it's not easy to be that kind of person or have that kind of drive, especially the part where it comes to editing down things and really making your ideas solid more than just a conceptual thought of something that you would like to have. It takes a team sometimes. If you have the money, you can afford that. If they see that the talent, at least the lead person or maybe the band, they have something that appeals to people for whatever reason, there's something about them that people want to buy that product. Maybe they're good looking. Maybe they're just peculiar, or there's something about them that is je ne sais quoi, something that appeals to the audience. But it's not easy to be that type of. That's like 1 in a million that hits that marker. The other guys they're workers, man. They work their asses off. They learn their songs, they work on their artistry all the time, And it's just like if people think it's a joke or it's not a real job. It is a real job, and it takes a lot of work and dedication. It's the kind of thing that most people don't have. And on top of that, there's other qualities about musicians that make them specialized for doing what they're doing. Who wants to get up on a stage and sing in front of a bunch of people? It might sound cool, but really doing it, um, you're putting yourself out there. I know for myself, I'm obviously undermining my point here, but I wouldn't like the idea of having to go in front of a bunch of people and explain myself or tell a funny story or a joke to amuse the audience at the risk of them rejecting me because, I have my issues, but I'm not sure where I'm going with that. The truth is that uh, I'm recording this video because I just wanted to try to test out this software to see how it works. So we'll see how it turns out here. The assault has taken form specifically of demonetization. Any content that can be transmitted over the internet, music, text, still images, video, has seen its price severely cut, often to zero. Supply and demand, folks. Straight up supply and demand. Across a wide range of fields, major revenue sources have crumbled. For musicians, recorded music sales; for writers, freelance fees and book advances; for publications, advertising revenue; and for the movie business, ticket sales as well as DVD sales and rentals. Well, I'm talking obviously about musicians, but visual artists can do some pretty amazing stuff with the new digital kind of art that they can do. CGI does unbelievable stuff nowadays, but there's a lot less recognition as the artist. Be a writer, you can be the kind of person that tries to capture the imagination of people by writing a particularly awesome story that people really, for whatever reason, can cling to. I find that most of the shows that are on TV today, they probably have these great teams of just really talented writers, but they don't necessarily do it for me. Most shows on television today, there's only a handful I really like. So even that, it's a saturation effect. You have all these channels now. It's only certain shows. How much time do people really have to sit at home and absorb this content? But I digress. For writers, freelance fees and book advances; for publications, advertising revenue; and for the movie business, ticket sales as well as DVD sales and rentals. As a result, artists and cultural institutions have learned to seek their income from sources that cannot be digitized, meaning physical objects and live experiences. Especially live experiences. Musicians tour, tour, tour. Writers give readings and talks, teach classes, do residences. And then it goes on. But what is the article getting to? The crisis has not just hit theaters, though their closure has been devastating for orchestras and ensembles, opera, dance, and theater companies, and the artists who create and perform them for them. It has not just hit museums, galleries, art spaces, and the artists whose work they show, the major basis of much of contemporary arts economy. Live, in-person, face-to-face events has been destroyed. And even the one art that was not weakened before the pandemic, the one creative arena that had been thriving financially in the 21st century, television, has suspended production, throwing tens of thousands out of work. We could talk on the knock-on effects about it, but it's not just that they can't get up close with the audience. This is going to have a knock-on effect for the entire economy. And our entire lives are about either producing something that people want to buy or servicing them and giving them something they can't get at home, whether it be at a restaurant or a massage parlor or Reiki or whatever you're into. These are all people who had jobs and livelihoods before that are totally under threat with what's happening here. And I want to tell you a little bit something about myself. I collect money for a living. I work for a company that's involved in new home construction. And let me tell you something about what this is doing to the guys that I need to collect money from, the guys and girls. There are two kinds of people in this world. There's the kind of businesses out there that have been operating for a long time. Like I said, there's the guys that have made it past 5 years and they know what they're doing. And what they really know how to do is make sure things get paid and they don't overextend themselves and they make a decent little living along the way. And then there's the guys that are driven by big dreams and they want to make the big money. And so they really extend themselves out and they have their pots in multiple fires and they might be able to handle the workload before. And maybe might be something about their particular talents, their eye for detail, their construction techniques, they've hired the right team, whatever it is. They've got a lot of work out there. And if it had all come back, they're very ambitious. So if it had all come back the way that it should have gone, they'd be doing just fine. But they're very leveraged, and you throw something like this at them, and they're toast. They can't pay because they can't work. And if they can't work, they can't finish the job. And in these guys, the way these guys work is they might get a little bit of a deposit up front to start the work. And then they hand the bills in after it's all done. And, people hold back a little bit to make sure that they're satisfied with the work in case there's something that needs to be finished up at the end. But the point is that all on the way, they have to pay their trades. They have to pay for materials. And a lot of that stuff they might leave to the end. They definitely have to pay their guys daily. You got to pay your guys once a week or every couple of weeks so that they can live and be able to sustain themselves. Businesses like us, we provide terms and credit, and that credit, especially in the construction business, can give a little bit more leeway than other businesses, I suppose. But you can work for a few months, you finish a job, which is the usual time frame, you get paid a lump sum, you're able to pay down the bill. Start another job and another job, you work for a few months, presumably you finish, there's no issues, lump sum, pay the bill. Those guys can't afford the overhead of having a location for a couple of months, just sit. If they have a shop, a storefront, they can't afford to have that thing sitting there. Most of these times they're so over leveraged that they don't have room for these tiny inconveniences or gigantic inconveniences, and so they're gonna go out of business, and they're not gonna pay us. And I'm expected to go out there and call these guys and tell them the bills are due. And I know they can't pay their bills because they can't finish the job. Now, it's not my fault they over leverage themselves. We should just go after them. But how are they ever going to pay for that? We're going to get involved in a legal battle where we're going to be going after them for years. They're not going to have anything. See, the point of what's going on right now is that there's a lot of people out there that are over leveraged in every way possible, whether it be on their house that they live in, their business, their investments. People have learned in this economy, if you want to make money, you got to get your money out there. You got to get it working for you. And so a lot of people do that. A lot of people have money, not so much in savings. I mean, in Canada, there's something like 60% of all households barely had $600 for an emergency. That was before this. So now the government sent out all this money to them that presumably they're going to be able to pay back. How? I don't know. It's not free money, by the way, folks. You're going to have to give it back. You're going to have to give it back. All this stuff that they're doing, all this money that they're giving to you, you're going to have to pay a large chunk of it back. And when these are people that barely made by in the first place, you think they're going to turn around and become really responsible people after this? I mean, how many people are not even going to go back to work because they think they've got it made pretty well? And that gets into, where does the government get its money that it loans to us while it's fucking us over in the process? And the fact that nobody seems to know where that comes from. Nobody understands central banking. Why doesn't anyone understand central banking? You should. You should understand that they're borrowing against the future of you and your children. And that money that you're paying off right now with your taxes came from money that they borrowed for your grandparents in a lot of cases, whether it was to fight wars or send out aid or to build infrastructure or to buttress society against these kinds of issues. But this has been going on. 2008 never got fixed, by the way. 2008 just put us in the kind of debt, almost all countries around the world, in the kind of debt that we were never really going to figure out how we were going to climb out of. All we know is we have this cheap money from the central banks that gives us to it ZIRP interest policies, zero interest rate policies. But countries have to make money too. It costs money to run a country. It costs money to build infrastructure. Some stuff depreciates. Some stuff needs to be replaced. Budgets have to be made. And they have to be kept. And nobody knows what's going on with this economy right now. Nobody knows what's going on. This is a disaster of epic proportions. Now, if you thought that a couple of musicians losing their jam space is an issue, how are governments supposed to pay to revitalize an economy they themselves are already over leveraged to the point of being mathematically impossible to pay it back? Productivity has been going down steadily over the years. Where do you think money comes from that pays for the lifestyle that we all enjoy? So when people think it's not even an issue that we can just shut down businesses to protect, I'm still waiting to see the science on that. The fact is that I'm not sure that we're actually doing anything right now that protects anyone that would have normally not been harmed by something like this every single year. Some years more than others. And we're pretending that this is something out of the ordinary. It's not. It's only the reaction that's out of the ordinary. It's only the reaction. It's only the panic. It's only the whipped up craziness on the part of the media that just keep telling you, don't worry, we know what we're doing. But you know what? Their lives, their jobs, they're not under, well, maybe they are under threat. Maybe they don't know it yet. But they are. Under the assumption that your government can fix this situation they created to protect you from something that you cannot be protected from. It's life. You can't conquer death. Shit happens. I'm sorry. I don't want anyone to die. I want everyone to live forever. In fact, when people reach a certain age, it would be awesome if they just grew wings and started flying around the air like angels and, protected children from getting hit by buses or whatever the fuck an angel would do. But that's not the way that it works. That's not the way that it works. And all this fear, all this drummed up panic, what is it getting us? In the now, it seems okay. People get to stay home and spend a little more time with their family and go for walks. But how much are we giving it up? How much are we giving up for that? Does any of that make sense? Who said it does? Under whose authority? I mean, that's a whole different question, but you're the ones who are going to suffer for this. My kids are going to suffer for this. I've had a decent life, but my kids have never had the chance to experience the kind of things that I have. And if this keeps up much longer, they won't get that opportunity. And that's not even, when you build a business, you might go bankrupt, but it takes you years to get yourself back on your feet again, unless you have some amazing ability to make money out of nothing. But typically, the way banking works is good credit creates more opportunities. But you have to be bold to get that good credit. You have to be smart and ambitious. And you have to do the right things to get that good credit. And everything we're doing right now as a society, as a country, as a world, in fact, except for the place where it all started, just saying, we're fucking ourselves. We're fucking ourselves hard. Your government is fucking you. Now, there's plenty of other ways I could go into that, but it's good enough to say that you may be destroying art. You may be destroying these fun places that we can go. But what happens when you destroy the food supply, which is what's happening now? What happens when you destroy the ability of the country to import goods to sell to people who need those goods when those people can't afford to buy them? How's it going to come back? The government's already been the least responsible person in the room for years because they don't regulate the banks that create the problems. They tell them to loosen their grip on the credit, and they provide it to people who will not. Why do we live in houses? I'm not going to keep going. I'm going to stop there. But this has to stop, and it has to stop now before it's too late, or we're all going to fuck ourselves in a way that's just unfuckable. You can't take this back. You can't take back the mess that we're making right now. There's going to be only one solution, and the people that are doing this, it's my belief that they already think they have their solution, and it's going to unbalance the whole world order that our grandparents fought and died for. Maybe they lived traumatized, but man, they would be rolling in their graves to see this shit. Get a grip. This is wrong. This is all wrong.